Welcome to the Soul Script podcast. Here we explore how to unlock the power of our story. Our journey here on Earth can be one of deep passion, intentional creation, and personal transformation. The only thing holding us back is our stories. Come and join me as we rewrite and reignite. All right, friends, we are back here for another week, another episode on the Soul Script podcast. I am your host, Lara Titanser, and today we are going to be continuing our conversation about reading your human design chart, at least at a very basic level, so that when you print off your chart, which you can do at soulscriptstudio.com, just right there on the home page, you can enter your information, be able to see your chart and download your chart with a little, some information about different aspects of your chart on there on that PDF. So this episode is supposed to help you or assist you when you download that and take a look at it to be able to see what the heck is going on with it so that you can at least somewhat understand at least what the different aspects of the body graph actually mean. So last week we talked about the centers. We were talking about the centers, and I had actually hoped to talk about all of these things in one episode, and I realized, nope, that's not going to work. We're going to have to make this into maybe a mini series talking about reading your human design chart. So here we are, we're on episode 2 of this mini series. Just as a review from the first podcast episode, we talked about centers, these energy centers. There are 9 energy centers. Each energy center has a different energy within them. You could have a defined or undefined energy center, meaning looking at your body graph chart, either it's colored in or it is not colored in. If it's open, it will not be colored in, or if it's undefined, it will not be colored in. And those are kind of some of the terms that you would typically hear. An open center or an undefined center are the same things. And then if you have a defined center, then you would see that it was colored in your chart. And the coloration does not matter. It just matters that it is colored in or left uncolored. Working from the top to the bottom, you have your head, your ajna, your throat, your G, your sacral, and your root. And then over out on the right, you have your solar plexus. Above the solar plexus, you have your heart. And then over to the left, you have your spleen. And we briefly went over all of the different energies held within those centers. So you definitely need to go back to episode 1, where we talk in full detail about these centers. So start there if you have no idea what I'm talking about, and then come back to this episode. Within every energy center, you will notice that there's numbers. Some of the energy centers have 3 numbers. Some of them have more than 3 numbers, but every single center is going to have some number in it. These numbers are referred to as your gates. And I know that some people have a hard time with, calling them your gifts. But honestly, I think about them as your gifts. And that's because every single number in there represents a type of energy that you will constantly and consistently exude or express or have. We talked about that with our centers, where we have centers that are defined, and we constantly and consistently feel the same type of energy in that area of our life or aspect of our energy. So the gates are getting even more detailed than just kind of the overall, my solar plexus is my emotion. Well, what strengths or energies are there within the solar plexus or within our emotions that add to it? Because emotions, the idea of just an emotion, that's really, really broad. What kind of gifts or human design qualities do you have that, can be really personalized just to you? So I call the gates our gifts. And they're a really great place to go into and get really specific about some personality traits or some just natural traits that you have that maybe you're not even aware of. Some of these things you will be aware of, and some of these things you are unaware of, and other people can feel them. And that's actually part of your chart, is you're going to have some gates that are defined. And you know that your gate is defined if it is colored in. So if you go to my website and you download your chart from there, the defined gates will be circled in black, except for in your G center, which is a red heart. And so it's the defined ones are circled in white, if that makes sense. So that is a defined gate. So each gate can be conscious or unconscious. You'll see this on either side of your chart. There are 2 columns, and one says design above it and one says personality above it. And you can see there's a list of numbers on those columns, and every single one of those numbers are the gates that are then defined within your body graph. Does that make sense? So the column to the left is your design. If I'm looking at my chart, the column to the left is your design, and you'll see a list of numbers with some symbols next to them. Now, those symbols are representative of the planets in the sky and where they were when you were born. So this is where astrology comes in when we're talking about human design. So you'll have, like on my chart, my sun is 21.3. And so I can look on my body graph and I can see that the gate number 21 is defined. Now the 21.3, or if you have a 0.5 or 0.6 or point whatever, that is getting into a lot of detail, and it's way more in depth than we even want to get into, even close to what we want to get into today, because honestly, we can make looking at human design really simple. And even if we're just looking at the basics, you're still going to get a lot out of it. You don't have to go in and spend a bajillion hours trying to look at every single micro detail of your chart. I would say start simple. When you want to go more in depth, then go have somebody help you to read your chart. That's something I do with my clients one-on-one when we have a session together, what I call a one-on-one transformation session. We incorporate human design into it so that we can get a better idea of the beliefs and the conditioning that we need to work on, which can help us to transform. So when you're ready to go into more detail, then book a consultation either with me or with somebody else, or talk to your friend about it and see their perspective and talk back and forth to kind of process through that and start figuring out all the depth of it. But for right now, you don't have to have that, okay? So these numbers, don't look at the 0.3, the 0.5, the 0.6. We're just going to leave those alone. And know that the numbers on the 2 columns on either side of your body graph are just a list of the numbers that you will also see in your energy centers that are your gates. Wow. Like I said in episode 1, this is really hard for me to explain such a visual chart to you over a podcast. I really, really hope that you have your body graph chart in front of you so that this makes any sense. So the column on the left, which is titled Design. Wow, I feel like we have tried to get to this point many times and I keep getting distracted on some other aspect that I want to tell you about. Okay, we're finally going to get to it. The column of numbers on the left-hand side, and if you're looking at my chart, it is gold, right? Those are your designs, and that means it is an unconscious gift that you have. It's just inherently part of you, and you may or may not be aware of it. You actually probably won't be aware of it until it has been brought into your awareness, either by somebody else or through experiences or through your human design chart. The column on your right-hand side that has personality above it, these are traits that you have developed. It's kind of your personality. It's things that you are conscious of and that you probably act on a regular basis. It is important to know that there is a difference between the design and the personality, because when you look at your chart, you are going to be able to see if your gate is unconscious or conscious. Okay, let's take a step back just a little bit and look at our whole chart, our whole body graph. We have the centers and we have the gates or the numbers inside of the centers. And now what you're going to notice is that there are lines, or what we call channels, connecting the centers to one to another. Okay, I think this is likely going to be the hardest aspect of the chart for me to describe over the podcast. So if you have your chart in front of you and you have a defined gate, so I have 31 defined, gate 31 defined. At least half of the channel or the line is going to have some kind of a coloration. It's going to be defined, right? And the channel, that half of that channel is defined because you have that gate defined, the one that's connected to it, the one that's going down or out or whatever from the defined gate. Now, I also have number 7 defined. And so if you look at the chart, you'll see that 31 and 7 are directly across from each other with a channel going between them, or a line going between them. And so that would make a defined channel. The whole thing is a complete channel because I have 31 and I have 7, the gate on the other side, both defined, so that is a complete channel. Now, let's say maybe you have gate number 39 defined, but on the other side, gate 55 is not defined, then you'll see that only half the channel is defined. Now, on the chart on my website, you will have different colors in those channels. And while the coloration of the centers does not matter, the coloration of your channels or your gates does. So going back to, the possibility that you have gate 39 defined, but you do not have gate 55 defined, so only half of that channel is defined. If it is the same color as the personality column, so kind of like this rusty red-brown color, then that means that the gate 39 that is defined is a personality one. It is one that you are conscious of, aware of. It's like one of those things when you sit down and, your second grade teacher asks you to write a paper about your gifts or talents or qualities. Those are the things that you would write down on it because you're aware of those talents that you have. Now, let's say that 39 is defined, but it actually has the gold color coming out of it. Those are unconscious gifts. And these are ones that are harder for us to see within ourselves until somebody has brought it to our attention. Now, this whole idea of it being conscious or unconscious is taking it even more in depth, and that might not be something that you need to pay attention to right now. I just want to empower you to be able to pay attention and understand it when you do want to, when it is time for you to do that. The basics that you need to know is that there are centers, and in those centers are gates, and the gates are connected to channels, and the channels connect different centers to each other, and that all of these things, the centers, the gates, and the channels, can either be defined or undefined. So if you're looking for areas that you could probably do some healing in, you're going to look at the undefined centers. That's the first place that you're going to start. And if you're looking for your superpowers, you're probably going to look at the defined centers or gates or channels. Now, this is not always true. We absolutely can have conditioning in the centers or gates or channels that are defined. I'm not going to say that you won't ever experience conditioning there, but I am saying that the undefined centers, gates, or channels are just a good springboard for you to take a look at maybe some possible conditioning. Now, likely when you first got your human design chart or when you were first introduced to human design, you were told about, your energy type. So there are 5 different energy types. The first one is manifester. The second one is manifesting generator. Then we have a generator. Then we have projector, and the last one is reflector. And those are kind of the most famous part of human design, or the most intriguing part, or maybe they're the most simple to understand, or at least we think they're the most simple to understand. And so that's kind of where most people start when they get their human design chart, and rightfully so, because knowing your energy type is kind of the meat of human design. I think it's going to give you your biggest bang for your buck if you understand what those energy types are, what your energy type is. It's going to be massively influential for you. And then knowing, where your open centers are or your gates are like the bonus layers on top of that. All right, let's start with how you understand that you are a manifester without just your paper telling you that you're a manifester. Because I guess I like to understand where this information is coming from, and maybe you want to understand it too. So when you look at your body graph and you find out that you are a manifester because somewhere on your chart write-up it says that you are a manifester, let's see what centers have to be defined in order to make you a manifester. So in order to be a manifester, you have to have your throat center defined, and your throat center needs to be connected to some kind of a motor center. Now, I'm realizing now that this gets us in a level deeper when it comes to centers, because not only are centers, your processing, your inspiration, your communication, your willpower, ego center, they also have some different attributes to them, and some of them are what we call motor centers. Your motor centers are the motor to you. They're something that propels you forward, and each different motor center is going to have, let's say, a different type of motor on it, or a different type of energy system or propulsion system. I'm just making all of these things up in my head as I'm trying to envision what the energy is behind these. So for instance, the root is a motor center. And what I think of when I feel the energy of this root center is like a piston. So it's like a push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. And then the solar plexus motor, if you will, is like a big wave. So it's this up, and then it's this down, and then it's this up, and then it's this down. So that's kind of the energy of that motor center. And then you have your sacral center, which is another motor center, but this motor is like a generator. So it's just constantly producing energy all the time. So it's like this. It is consistently going. It doesn't have any peaks. It doesn't have any falls. It doesn't have any ebbs or flows. It is just consistent. So there are 4 different motor centers in the chart. You have your sacral center, your root center, solar plexus, and your heart. Those are the 4 different motor centers. So if you are a manifester, then you have your throat center defined, and it is connected to a motor center. And what that means is that it has a channel that is defined going from your throat center over to any one of the motor centers. So it could be like you have a throat center defined and you have your heart center defined, and there is a defined channel between the two. That would make you a manifester. Now, if you have your sacral center defined, then you are no longer a manifester, because the only types that will have their sacral center defined are the manifesting generators and the generators. And that is because they both have that term generator in them. And like I said before, your sacral center energy or motor center acts as that generator, just consistent life force energy. That's what the center is. It's your life force energy. It's vitality. So as a manifester, you will not have your sacral center defined, but you will have your throat defined, and it will be connected to any one of the motor centers. Okay? That's what makes you a manifester. So for a manifesting generator, you will have the same thing as a manifester, but you will also have your sacral center defined. That is what makes you a manifesting generator. Now, to look and see, what makes you a generator, if you are a generator, you will have your sacral center defined, but you will not have your throat center defined that is connected to a motor center. So maybe you have your throat defined, but it is not connected by a defined channel to any one of the motor centers. And that is the qualification, I guess you could say, for a generator. A projector would mean that you would not have your sacral center defined, nor would you have a motor center connected to your throat center. Making sense here? And then a reflector is somebody who does not have any of their centers defined. Every single center is wide open. So while it's really fun to have your printout and it says that you're a manifestor or manifesting generator, I think it's better to be even more familiar with your chart and be able to see, oh, the reason why I am a manifester is because I have a throat center that is defined and connected via a channel to a motor center that is defined. Oh, wow, look at you, you smarty pants. Now, if you know that information, you're like miles ahead from most people who have looked at their human design chart and to know anything about human design. I really want to talk about each type and what are kind of the characteristics of each type, but I'm going to have to do that on the next episode because it is going to take a long while to get through that. And maybe I need to talk about each type on a different episode because understanding your type is going to be very important and I want to do it justice. But let's just continue to familiarize ourselves with some of the information on the rest of the write-up of your chart so that when you're reading through it, you can kind of be like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're throwing down. Okay, so taking a step below your body graph, at least on the chart that you will get from my website, soulscriptstudio.com, there will be your type listed, which my type is a projector, and it has a little blurb about what a projector is. So for example, it says, you are a true master of leadership and understanding. Your gift is to recognize others and show them the way. By waiting until you are invited, you find the right people and situations that appreciate your wisdom and insight. Your energy automatically attracts them. Always remember how special and valuable your role is to guide in this world. So everybody who is a projector and looks up this chart, that write-up is going to be the exact same for every projector because that is the role, I guess you could say, that a projector plays in this world. If it were a big stage, we each have our different roles. There's the people who are the producers, there's the director, there's the actors, there's the behind the stage crew. What are they called? The stage crew. So everybody has a different role that they play in order for the production to happen. And a projector plays this role in the world. So on your chart, you'll see that your energy type is listed and it will give you this cute little paragraph of information just at its basics of kind of what your role is in the world. Okay, so under your type is something called your strategy. And your strategy is also going to be the same for each energy type. So every projector is going to have the same strategy. Every manifestor will have the same strategy. The strategy for a projector is wait for the invitation. So when you're looking at your chart, you'll know, okay, this is the same for everybody across the board. And when we go into each and every energy type, I will talk to you about what the heck your strategy actually is for that specific type and how it applies to your life. But at least you know that your strategy is the same for every single energy type. And then you have your authority, and your authority is going to be different depending on what centers are defined in your chart. So strategy will be the same for every type, and then your authority will be different dependent upon your specific chart. Now, it is the combination of knowing your energy type, your strategy, and your authority that really are going to be the ones that make a big difference for you. I have found in my own experience that the combination of these three things helps me to live by my design, quote unquote, live by my design. And what this actually means is I feel like the flow of life is so much freer when I honor these different ways that I am designed. It helps me to make better choices by my design. It helps me to live in a way, a lifestyle that is more conducive and honoring to my design. So going and understanding these aspects, if you were to do nothing else but to look at your chart, find your type, your strategy, and your authority, you will empower yourself to be able to live a more abundant, aligned, freeing, wonderful, amazing, crazy, awesome life. Okay, I'm going to stop it there for this podcast episode. It has been a lot of information and it's a lot to understand. So maybe it's better that we're taking these week by week because it'll give you time to just absorb it all, to digest it, to look at your chart, to ponder on what that means. And then you can go back the next week or the next episode if it's already released. Just take a little bit of a breather, come back and learn some more when you're ready. So we're going to go ahead and end there. And on our next episode, we will be going into our energy types, starting with manifestors. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration. Your support makes a world of difference. Until next time, keep rewriting and reigniting your story.